I'm Joe Fryer. Christine Romans will join me in just a moment. We begin this hour with growing concerns of a widening war in the Middle East. Israeli forces say they carried out airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. The goal, the Israeli military says, was to degrade Hezbollah's capabilities. The strike comes just as the leader of the Iran-backed group vowed to retaliate against Israel. Hezbollah blames Israel for that attack, targeting walkie-talkies and pagers, leaving at least 37 dead, including 2 children, with thousands more injured.
This will be confronted with a severe reckoning and a just retribution in expected and unexpected ways. The news will be what you see, not what you hear.
We have team coverage of this developing situation. In just a few moments, we're going to hear from NBC News military analyst, Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs. But we begin with NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez in Tel Aviv. Raf, good morning to you. So let's start with this new wave of escalation in Lebanon. What's the latest, and what is Israel saying about these strikes?
Joe, good morning. Israel carrying out more strikes today following that intense barrage last night. Israel striking all across southern Lebanon with both aircraft and artillery. An Israeli security official tells me they say that they are aiming to, in their words, degrade Hezbollah's capability along the Israel-Lebanon border. They said yesterday they struck around 100 different rocket sites. Now, the sirens are going off in northern Israel. That is a sign that Hezbollah is responding. But this appears to be a broader confrontation than the sort of tit-for-tat skirmishing that we have been seeing going on since October 8th. Israel's military saying that it is trying to overall weaken Hezbollah's positions in the south, as opposed to take out a specific rocket site, take out a specific Hezbollah operative. This is deeply, deeply worrying for civilians on both sides. And we should, Joe, say that the symbolism here also striking, that these Israeli attacks began just a few minutes before Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, who you heard from a moment ago, started speaking for the first time since that wave of walkie-talkies and pagers began blowing up this week.
So, Raf, Israel and Hezbollah have been trading attacks for about a year now, and Hezbollah's leader has called this week's attacks an act of war, vowing to retaliate. Is the feeling on the ground that this latest escalation could lead to something more dire?
People are very, very worried, Joe, on both sides of the border. I can tell you here in Israel the last couple of days, people have sort of been in awe of what seems to be the prowess of their intelligence services carrying out an attack using pagers, using walkie-talkies, unlike anything the world has seen before. But today, people are very, very nervous because Hezbollah, while it has been dealt a significant blow, remains an extremely powerful militant group, far, far stronger than Hamas. And I think there is an understanding on this side of the border that if it came to war, there really would be devastation in both Israel and in Lebanon. What's also got people concerned is not just what you're seeing on the border, but this statement from Israel's defense minister a little earlier in the week that this war has entered a new phase and that Israel is shifting its focus from the fight against Hamas in Gaza to this new battle against Hezbollah in Lebanon. We're seeing the 98th Division. It's one of the most battle-hardened Israeli units shifting up towards the border. And at this point, Joe, with no sign of a ceasefire, it is hard to see where the off-ramps are that get us away from war. Jeff.
Raf, in the wake of that attack on those communication devices this week, Hezbollah's leaders called the coordinated explosions a terrorist attack. The United Nations human rights chief has said the explosions may have violated international law. So just how is Israel responding to these concerns? Even U.S. lawmakers, I mean, what are we hearing from them?
So we're hearing a lot of criticism from American lawmakers, from progressive Democrats, especially Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, talking about these explosions, pagers and walkie-talkies, saying it unequivocally violates international humanitarian law and undermines U.S. efforts to prevent a wider conflict. And if you think about it, Joe, on the one hand, this attack clearly targeting Hezbollah members. These explosives were planted in devices used by Hezbollah. And then at the same time, there are thousands of Hezbollah members. Not all of them are fighters. And they were in supermarkets. They were walking on the street. They were on public transport when these devices started exploding. There's simply no way Israel could have known what kind of civilian casualties this was going to cause. I'll give you just an example. Imagine that somebody was on a plane when one of those pagers went off. You easily could have seen a civilian airliner come crashing down. Jeff.
Raf Sanchez, thank you so much for your reporting. Appreciate it. For more now, we are joined by NBC News military analyst, Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel, thank you for joining us. It's a question I've asked you before, but in the wake of these latest developments, I'll ask it again. How concerned are you this new escalation could be a prelude to a wider war?
Well, one should be very concerned, but nobody there wants a wider war. Hezbollah doesn't. Iran doesn't. That's why they use Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah to do its bidding. Israel doesn't. The United States, nobody wants a wider war. But all it takes is one small mistake, and you will have a wider war. Iran, in particular, is not interested in a wider war because against Israel, it would fare extremely poorly. That's why it's content to permit and encourage others to attack Israel. And there's a groundswell of opinion inside Israel to shift its focus from Gaza, which to many people inside Israel looks like a fool's errand, and shift the interest to protecting the northern border, particularly those Israelis who live near there. Securing the northern border is extremely important to all Israelis. And at the end of the day, the real decisions will revolve around what happens with Netanyahu politically inside Israel, Joe.
So, Colonel, if there is a wider war in the region, what is Israel's capability to fight on more than one front if they're still heavily engaged in Gaza? And also, Raf mentioned Hezbollah is a powerful militant group. What are their capabilities?
Well, fighting on more than one front is extremely difficult, as everyone who has done so, including the United States, has discovered. We fought on two fronts during the Second World War, but we had to make a decision to fight in Europe and destroy the Nazis first before we would continue the fight against the Japanese in the Pacific, because we didn't have the capability, as strong as we were, didn't have the capability to fight on two fronts. Israel doesn't either. And it has already shifted the large proportion of its forces from Gaza up towards the north. It would prefer to fight on no fronts, but fighting on two fronts is extremely difficult and may, in fact, be detrimental to the existence of Israel, thus the focus on Lebanon, on Hezbollah, and on northern Israel, Joe.
Colonel, the U.S. has pushed for a ceasefire in Gaza over the last years, also, though, repeatedly said it supports Israel's right to defend itself. What is the U.S. role in all of this right now, and if there is a wider conflict?
Well, it's to support Israel, to be sure, and politically it's difficult to advise against that. Even so, American politics has turned out to be extremely quixotic. Nobody knows what the tenor of politics inside the United States, which drives support of Israel, what that will be after the 20th of January next year. Who is in the Congress, who holds the keys to the money, who holds the influence in both the White House and the Congress, that will tell you whether or not Israel will be able to be supported fully the way it has been in the past, Joe.
All right, so many factors at play here. Colonel Jack Jacobs, as always, appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us. Turning now to a scandal that could have major implications in a key battleground state election. The Republican candidate for governor in North Carolina, Mark Robinson, is refusing to step down from the race. This comes after a bombshell CNN report that alleges he made lewd and offensive comments on a porn site from 2008 to 2012, years before he entered politics. Now, Robinson denies all the accusations, and NBC News has not authenticated those online posts. NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton joins us now from Raleigh, North Carolina, with more on this. So, Antonia, walk us through this extraordinary report by CNN. What kind of comments is Robinson accused of making, and how does CNN say it's able to verify that these are his?
Good morning, Joe. Well, Robinson is the current lieutenant governor and is the GOP gubernatorial candidate here in North Carolina. And he is accused of making a series of pretty shocking and in some cases highly inappropriate remarks. And they range from allegedly calling himself a black Nazi to self-declaring himself a perv who has memories of peeping on women as they showered, watching them without their knowledge or consent. I want to read a couple of the flashiest or sort of most shocking remarks to some of the voters here on the ground. At one point he said, quote, "Slavery is not bad. Some people need to be slaves. I wish they would bring it back. I would certainly buy a few." He used numerous slurs, including the F slur to refer to LGBTQ people. And he has, of course, denied all of this. But people here on the ground were anticipating this story all day yesterday before it even came out. Voters had heard something was coming. Political operatives and candidates were on both sides were all talking about this with serious concern about how it would reshape the race from the top of the ticket all the way down ballot, Joe.
So we know Robinson's denying this report. He posted a video on X just ahead of its publication. What all does he have to say about this?
That's right. So he issued this denial actually in the hours before the report even came out. And to give you some detail, this is a report where they kind of carefully go through his social media account, his alleged account under the name Mini Soldier. They're able to tie it to an email address that he has used, to photos of him, to comments where he sort of self-identifies himself as Mark. But he spoke to CNN directly and has issued this video saying very forcefully that these are not his words, that it is not him, and he is staying in this race. Take a look.
Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. You know my words, you know my character, and you know that I have been completely transparent in this race and before. Instead, they want to focus on salacious tabloid lies. We're not going to let them do that. We are staying in this race. We are in it to win it.
I think, Joe, it's important, though, to add the context that this is not the first time that Robinson has been in hot water for very controversial remarks. He has at times appeared to cast doubt on the Holocaust and its reality, and has made comments about women that have been seen to be incredibly offensive to women and female voters here in North Carolina. So this is not his first time in the hot seat.
Yeah, and Antonia, with that in mind, I mean, what has been the broader reaction from the likes of former President Trump and other Republicans? Is there any pressure on him to step down or to drop out?
The reactions range a bit. There definitely has been that pressure in the hours before this report came out. According to different politicians, staffers that I've spoken to here on the ground, there was an effort to get him to drop out. There were even reports that the Trump campaign was asking him not to appear alongside Trump or Vance at upcoming events. But the Trump campaign actually spoke to NBC News and said that there was no truth to that. And the NCGOP released a statement last night without a name or signature on it, backing their guy. And look, the deadline for him to drop out was 11:59 p.m. last night. That has, of course, come and gone. So he is going to be the GOP gubernatorial candidate on the ballot in just a few weeks, Joe.
All right. Antonia reporting from North Carolina. Thank you so much. Let's bring in NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray for more on North Carolina, as well as just the state of the race for the White House. Mark, good to have you with us. North Carolina, a state that has not gone to a Democrat in a presidential election since Obama in 2008. But this year it is most definitely a battleground state. The State House in Raleigh right now is run by the Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, but there are polls currently. What are they telling us about both the presidential and the gubernatorial races in the Tar Heel state? When it comes to the Electoral College, I mean, what could this mean to the presidential matchup if Vice President Harris does end up flipping North Carolina?
Yeah, Joe, you ended up mentioning that Barack Obama was the last Democrat to carry North Carolina in presidential contests back in 2008. However, just in 2020, Joe Biden lost the state by 1 percentage point. It was very, very close. And according to polls right now, Kamala Harris has a very slight lead, although importantly within the margin of error. And in that gubernatorial contest, we end up having Democrat Josh Stein up double digits over Mark Robinson. And that's consistent in other polling. And Joe, as far as the question about what this means for the presidential contest in North Carolina, look, 16 electoral votes for North Carolina are very, very important. If Harris is able to win North Carolina in 2024, that opens up so many other paths to to 270 electoral votes, gives her some margin for error in those Great Lakes stakes, for example, places like Pennsylvania and Michigan. And so, you know, the fact that this is happening in North Carolina with just 7 weeks to go before the presidential election and the overall election is not good news for the Republican Party.
Antonia pointed out it's highly unlikely Robinson's going to step aside or be pushed out of the race. But if that happened, what option do Republicans have?
Yeah, Joe, you know, again, as Antonia ended up mentioning, last night was the deadline, 11:59, for another candidate to appear because overseas and military ballots have already been issued from North Carolina. So these ballots are going. Republicans could always decide to say, hey, we want to have another candidate. Perhaps maybe there's a write-in possibility, but their options are severely limited after last night's deadline passing.
Let's talk about the big picture nationally now in the presidential race. Are we seeing any shifts in the polls following last week's debate between VP Harris and former President Trump?
Joe, the totality of polls indicate that Democrats are now in their strongest position in all of 2024. I mean, one reason why was the switching of Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee. The other is obviously what happened after the debate. You end up having a Fox News poll that now has Kamala Harris up 2 percentage points among registered voters. That's within the margin of error. Other polls show a similar thing. Now, there was a New York Times Siena poll that shows a tied race. And it is worth noting, Joe, that even though Democrats are in the strongest position they've been in a while, this race remains incredibly close.
Yeah, I mean, but those polls do reflect this bump in the polls in favor of Vice President Harris that we've seen since she joined the race 2 months ago. Democrats, though, what's key is they need to hold on to that so-called blue wall in the Midwest in November. So let's break that down. What are the latest on those battleground states that will be vital in this election?
Joe, it's kind of the same picture that we see nationally, that Democrats are in their strongest position in the past entire year. A batch of Quinnipiac polls end up having Harris ahead within the margin of error in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. Wisconsin is very close. But, Joe, there were other polls that end up showing Pennsylvania tied. We've seen just tons and tons of polls over the last 48 hours. And, again, the conclusions are, one, that Harris and Democrats are in their strongest position in an entire year, and two, that this still remains a very close race, and a shift of 2 or 3 points could change what we're seeing right now.
I feel like you're going to utter those words a lot in the coming weeks. All right, Mark Murray, good to have you with us. Mark,
yeah.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. With such a tight race, the vice president leaned on one of her major celebrity endorsements in Michigan last night. It was an event hosted by Oprah Winfrey. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest from the campaign trail.
Vice President Harris once again in the critical swing state of Michigan, this time getting a celebrity boost from Oprah Winfrey at a live-streamed event.
Madam Vice President, hello. Welcome to Michigan.
It's so good to be back.
Winfrey with this plea for voters.
We are all together, united for one cause, and that is to get out the vote for Kamala Harris.
And with in-person early voting beginning in several states, a new poll showing just how tight this race is. Harris and former President Trump tied at 47% nationally. And in the key state of Pennsylvania, Harris has a slim lead within the margin of error. Meanwhile, the former president looking to boost Republican congressional candidates, making a pitch in deep blue New York.
With terrorists and criminals pouring in, and with inflation eating your hearts out, vote for Donald Trump. What the hell do you have to lose?
While Harris has attacked Trump on health care.
They intend to end the Affordable Care Act, all based on concepts of a plan. Concepts.
The former president is pledging to lift the $10,000 cap on state and local tax deductions, known as SALT, even though the controversial cap was part of his signature tax law in 2017, a move critics said targeted Democratic-leaning states with high property taxes. Now,
I will cut taxes for families, small businesses, and workers, including restoring the SALT deduction.
Focusing on concerns over immigration, Trump now says he plans to visit Springfield, Ohio, where he's faced fierce criticism for his comments about Haitian immigrants. Back to you.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much. The future of Trump media is up in the air this morning. The firm hit a third straight record low when the stock market closed yesterday, a day when Wall Street reached record highs. Former President Trump owns 57% of the company, which also owns his social media app, Truth Social. Before now, he and other investors were banned from selling shares because of a merger earlier this year, but those selling restrictions expired yesterday. Editor-in-chief of Investopedia, Caleb Silver, joins us now with more on this. Let's get to Trump media in just a moment, but first just talk about the economy. Great day on Wall Street, S&P, Dow, huge gains. We know the markets hate uncertainty. We had the Fed rate finally come forward this week and say the Fed say we're going to cut these interest rates. Is the feeling that inflation is under control right now? What was going on yesterday on Wall Street?
Yeah, finally, I think investors got a chance to digest the Fed's statement and the fact that it made such an aggressive move by lowering rates by 0.5%. And I think once that made its way through the psyche, I think we had a big rally, right? It was a lot of bulls yesterday on Wall Street, a little bit of a sell-off today. But stocks at record highs is an indication that investors have a lot of confidence and can see the future. And the future, according to the Fed, is lower interest rates through the rest of this year and next year. By the end of next year, Joe, they expect the Fed funds rate to be at 3.4%. That's significantly lower than it is today, and that opens up a lot of possibilities for investors.
Let's talk about Trump media. Explain these restrictions on being able to sell it and what it is we're seeing right now, both with former President Trump and just with other investors.
Yeah, when a company goes public, there's typically a 6-month lockup expiration for insiders when they cannot sell their shares that were granted to them before the initial public offering. In this case, it was a special purpose acquisition company, a SPAC, that went public with Trump media. But Trump and others, the insiders, are barred from selling shares until 4 p.m. yesterday. That's when the lockup expiration expired. That stock has been selling off precipitously over the past month, but really since it went public about 6 months ago, used to be worth about $10 billion. Now it's worth $3 billion. So insiders can sell as of this morning, really as of last night, and already the shares are down 4% in pre-market trading.
The Trump stock, you kind of mentioned here, it's dropped, nearly 80% since it went public in March. It had that surge when he survived his assassination attempt, but then we've sort of seen a drop, especially after the debate last week. Should he hold on to his shares? I mean, I know it's not up to you to decide, but I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, they're worth about $1.8 billion given the share price right now and falling as soon as that stock opens today. But he has vowed to not sell his shares. Doesn't mean he can't or he won't. But there's others that also own about 15 to 18% of the company that are on the inside who can also sell. Plus, there's also about 600,000 individual shareholders that have bought this stock, probably on a bet that Trump will return to the White House. They could sell at any time. So if we see some more selling pressure, especially big movements, and those will be flagged through an SEC filing, you could see the stock falling even more. But it is basically a bet that he'll return to the White House by those who believe in it.
That's basically what this stock is at this point in our time.
Yeah,
right
it's
now,
a company
right?
that really has one product, and that's that Truth Social app. And that company only did about $2 million in revenue in the first 6 months of this year.
All right, Caleb Silver, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Time now for your morning news now weather. A warm start to the weekend east of the Rockies with cooler temps along the east coast. Meteorologist Angie Lastman has the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe. We've got summer-like conditions across much of the country. Waking up this morning to warmer than normal temperatures, and that same trend is going to continue all the way through our afternoon hours. Look at all of these spots across the country that are at least hitting 80 degrees by this afternoon. Minneapolis into the low 80s, Denver into the high 80s. We've got mid-90s for both Wichita and Dallas, as well as Houston. El Paso heads to the mid-90s, and even the warmth spreading a little farther to the east. Charleston expected to head to those low 90s, while Buffalo tops out at 81 degrees. Still, 81 degrees, that's more than 10 degrees above where we should be for this time of year, kind of wrapping up summer and heading into fall. We've got that same kind of trend lasting into tomorrow, too. 88 for St. Louis, mid-80s in Detroit, Cincinnati at 91 degrees, mid-80s for Roanoke, and you guessed it, those 90s are continuing for folks across Texas and Oklahoma. They've just had a brutal summer when it comes to temperatures, and that trend isn't over just yet. Speaking of summer wrapping up, the autumnal equinox, that happens on Sunday, and temperatures in places like Boston will feel a little more fall-like. Mid-60s expected Sunday, Monday, Tuesday as we roll into our next work week. We've got the low 70s for Philadelphia, not bad for this time of year as well in Richmond as we top out into the 70s. But take a peek at Cleveland, at Cincinnati. We still have those 80s as we wrap up our weekend and head into next week. Big picture look for today. We've got some storms that are going to chug dug through parts of the Great Lakes and the Midwest. Not a whole lot in the way of severe weather, but still could be impactful to any Friday afternoon plans, so watch for that. If you're watching from out west, we've got comfortable conditions for you. Plenty of sunshine up and down the East Coast, but again, those hot and humid conditions last across parts of the South. The tropics, we are far from done with hurricane season, of course. We've got to go all the way to the end of November, and we're watching kind of a large area of really disorganized thunderstorms. We're watching this because we could potentially be talking about a tropical depression maybe next week. It has not formed. We don't know where it will form, but once it does, that'll give us a better idea of how this could impact, say, parts of the Caribbean or the United States coastline here as we get into next week. This is something that we'll watch. Right now, the National Hurricane Center giving it a 40% chance of development. So again, this is something we'll keep a close eye on even after the weekend and into next week. Speaking of the weekend, here's a big picture look of your Saturday. It'll be warm out west. You've got lots of sunshine from the Pacific Northwest down to Southern California and parts of the desert Southwest. A little bit of shower activity, so indoor plans in some spots might be necessary. Again, from the Midwest, basically Indiana stretching down to New Mexico, we'll see some rain chances. And then we have a couple of these showers that are going to work across parts of interior, the Northeast and parts of the Mid-Atlantic. But otherwise, if you're looking for some sunshine, you've got plenty of it across the Southeast. Joe, those showers and thunderstorms will be right in the center of the country by the time Sunday rolls around, but nicer conditions on the East Coast and on the West Coast.
I'm thrilled to see our friends in the Southeast getting some sunshine.
Yeah, as if they need more of it.
They deserve it. All right. Thanks so much, Angie. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a contagious cough on the rise across the country. The warning from doctors and what you can do to keep your family healthy. Up first after the break, new privacy concerns involving some of your favorite social media platforms. The new allegations by federal investigators. Next. We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.